Across from me, Olivia scrolled through her phone, oblivious to the fact that her world was about to come crashing down. I stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, casually stirring my tea as if it were just another ordinary morning. Taking a slow sip, I let the moment linger before speaking, my voice steady. We need to finalize the divorce by Thursday. That way you can enlist your AP as a free woman. Her phone slipped from her grasp, landing with a dull thud on the floor. Her body went rigid, fingers frozen. For a second, I thought she might not have heard me. Then slowly, the realization dawned in her eyes. Panic crept in, flickering beneath the surface as she finally turned to face me. She blinked rapidly, struggling to process my words. And then came the first instinctive response. Denial. What? What are you even saying? Her voice wavered, a forced laugh escaping her lips as if she hoped this was some kind of twisted joke. I took another sip, unfazed. Don't do that, Olivia. My tone remained level, unshaken. We both knew exactly what I was talking about. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Just a strangled breath before she forced herself to try again. You're overreacting, she blurted, hands clenching into fists at her sides. I don't know what kind of ridiculous idea you've gotten into your head, but I cut her off with a quiet chuckle. Olivia, stop. Setting my cup down, I met her gaze without flinching. We both know you've been screwing Brandon for months. I've known for a while. And now I'm done. So like I said, the divorce needs to be wrapped up by Thursday. She went rigid, her lips parting slightly, as if struggling to breathe, the weight of my words crashing down on her. She hadn't expected me to know who it was. That reaction alone was all the confirmation I needed. You're wrong. She shook her head frantically, taking a small step back, her mind scrambling for an escape route. I don't know where you're getting this from, but I exhaled, reaching into my pocket. I was hoping you'd at least have the decency to admit it. Pulling out my phone, I swiped a few times, then turned the screen toward her. But if you need a reminder, her eyes flickered to the screen. And just like that, whatever fight she had left disappeared. Her face went ghostly pale. The photos weren't vulgar, nothing explicit. No, I had been meticulous, calculated. I didn't need grainy hotel room snapshots to ruin her. What I had was far worse. Screenshots of messages, photos of her cozying up to Brandon at a bar, her hand resting on his chest as she laughed, carefree and oblivious. Images of her slipping into his apartment on nights she swore she was working late. I had it all. Timestamps, locations, undeniable proof of her betrayal. A story so airtight there was no room for doubt. A strangled gasp escaped her as she stumbled back, her grip catching the edge of the dining table for support. Her knees wobbled beneath her, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw it. Real fear in her eyes. You went through my phone. Her voice was barely there, raw and unsteady. I shook my head. I didn't have to. She had been careless. You were sloppy, Olivia. I stepped forward, watching as she shrank back, her entire body recoiling. The sudden late nights, the new lingerie I never got to see, the way you'd swing between cold indifference and forced affection, like you were trying to convince yourself just as much as me. But the worst part? She actually thought I was too blind to see it. Her breathing turned shallow, her chest rising and falling too fast as she clung to the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. No, you don't understand, she stammered. It's not what you think, it's, oh, spare me, I scoffed, cutting her off before she could spin some pathetic excuse. Let me guess. It was a mistake? It didn't mean anything? Or my personal favorite? You were going to tell me, but you didn't want to hurt me? Tears gathered in her eyes, her lips trembling, but I felt nothing, nothing. There was no anger left, no sadness, just the cold certainty that I was done. Daniel, please. Her voice cracked as she tried again, desperation creeping in. I tilted my head. Why, did you listen to me when you decided to sleep with Brandon? Did you stop and think about what this would do to me before you climbed into his bed? I held her gaze, unflinching. No, you didn't. So tell me, Olivia, why the hell should I listen now? She swallowed hard, struggling to steady herself, to grasp onto anything that might save her. It's, it's complicated, she whispered. A dry laugh escaped me. No, it's actually really simple, I said, my voice calm, almost detached. You broke your vows. You gambled with our marriage. I let the silence stretch before finishing. And now you lose. A choked sob tore from her throat, raw and desperate. But it didn't touch me. She was falling apart, shaking her head as if sheer denial could undo what had already been done. I exhaled slowly. Here's how this is going to play out, I continued. The divorce will be finalized by Thursday. I've already spoken to a lawyer. She blinked, struggling to process my words, but I kept going. I get the house. You leave with exactly what you brought into this marriage. No spousal support, no financial safety net. You're free to be with Brandon because, let's be real, that's what you wanted all along. Her head snapped up, wild desperation flashing in her eyes. You can't do this to me, she hissed. Her voice turned sharp, laced with bitterness. I gave you years of my life. You can't just throw me away like this. I raised an eyebrow. That's funny. I was thinking the exact same thing about you. Her lips trembled, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She was cornered, and she knew it. Her fingers curled and uncurled at her sides as she grasped for anything, some kind of retort, some way to turn this around. You're going to regret this, she snapped, anger flaring in her eyes. You think you have everything figured out, that you're so in control, but you're making the biggest mistake of your life. I stepped closer, my voice lowering to something cold, something final. The only mistake I made was believing you were the woman I married. But that person, she's been gone for a long time. Her shoulders shook as another sob ripped through her. Daniel, please, she choked out, reaching for me, desperation in her touch. But I didn't move closer. The sight of her outstretched hand would have meant something once, not anymore. Now, after everything, it was almost laughable. Thursday, I repeated as I turned for the door. Be ready. Then I walked away, leaving her standing there, shattered, powerless. For the first time in our marriage, she wasn't the one in control. And damn, it felt good. Her breathing was erratic, her fingers clutching the edge of the dining table like she needed it to stay upright. I had never seen her like this, trapped, exposed, completely without an upper hand. But I wasn't naive enough to think she'd just accept her fate. People like Olivia don't fold. They manipulate. They twist the truth. They find an angle and use it. And just as expected, the act began. First, the tears. Her eyes shimmered, her expression softening as she tried to summon the fragile, remorseful wife I had once trusted. Daniel, she whispered, voice breaking. I know I messed up, but you're acting too fast. We can fix this. Her hand shook slightly as she grasped at hope. We can go to therapy. I'll do anything. I laughed, an actual, full-bodied laugh. The audacity was unreal. You'll do anything, I repeated, tilting my head slightly. Where was that when you were sneaking off to Brandon's place? When you were telling him how alive he made you feel? Her eyes widened, and there it was, the flicker of sheer panic. She hadn't realized how much I had seen, how deep I had gone. I leaned in slightly, watching her squirm under the weight of her own lies. Or do you only care now because I refuse to be the safety net you thought would always be there? She opened her mouth, then shut it again, struggling for something to say. And then, just like that, the next stage of defense kicked in. Gaslighting. This isn't fair, she blurted suddenly, her tone shifting. The tears vanished. Her posture straightened. I know I made a mistake, she began, but I had heard enough. Oh, but what about you? Her voice sharpened, grasping for something to turn the blame back on me. You've been distant for months. You never even tried to make things exciting between us. Ah, there it was, the classic "this is your fault too" card. I folded my arms, unimpressed. So let me get this straight. You cheated? But somehow that's because I wasn't entertaining enough for you? Her lips pressed into a tight line. You were never home, she shot back. Always buried in work. Always too busy with your projects. I felt invisible. I let out a short, humorless chuckle. Right. And instead of, I don't know, talking to me like an adult, you decided to spread your legs for another man. And now you expect me to blame myself for it? Her jaw tightened. She was running out of excuses, and we both knew it. Daniel, she tried again, her voice softening, dripping with carefully measured sorrow. It wasn't just about the physical stuff. She paused, as if choosing her next words carefully. Brandon listened to me. He made me feel heard. I raised an eyebrow. Then why didn't you just talk to me, Olivia? Why lie? Why sneak around? Or did you just enjoy the thrill of getting away with it? Her gaze dropped to the floor. Silence. Yeah, that's what I thought. I exhaled slowly, reaching for my coffee and taking a deliberate sip before speaking again, my voice steady, unwavering. I don't care about your justifications, Olivia. You made your choice. I set my mug down. And now I'm making mine. Her nostrils flared. She was losing control, and that was something she hated. Then came the shift, the moment the desperation burned off, replaced by raw, seething anger. Fine. She wiped at her cheeks, her voice sharp now. You want to be a cold-hearted bastard about this? Go ahead, but don't think for a second that I'm going to let you screw me over. There it is. You don't get to just throw me out like garbage, she spat, fury radiating off her. I have rights in this marriage, Daniel. If you think I'm walking away with nothing, you're delusional. I smirked, lifting my mug for another slow sip. Oh, you want to talk about rights? I set the cup down, lacing my fingers together on the counter as I leveled my gaze at her. Great, let's talk about rights. She stilled. I leaned in slightly, watching her like a predator toying with its prey. See, I was smart, I continued, voice calm, almost amused. I saw this coming months ago. So before I even started gathering evidence, I met with my lawyer. Her breath hitched. And then I saw it. That split second where it clicked. The moment she remembered. Almost a year ago, when I had oh so casually brought up the idea of updating our legal paperwork to protect our individual assets. That tiny moment she hadn't thought twice about. Until now. She had signed it without a second thought, brushing it off as just another routine legal formality. And now it had come back to destroy her. I pulled a crisp, folded document from my pocket and slid it across the counter. In case you've forgotten, this is what you agreed to, I said smoothly. Since you broke the trust in our marriage, the agreement is clear. You only take what's legally yours. No spousal support, no share in my assets. Her face crumpled. That can't be right, she whispered, snatching up the paper with trembling hands, her eyes darting over the fine print. You didn't think, she started, but I cut in. You didn't think you'd get caught, I finished for her. She looked like she might be sick. I shrugged. You can fight it in court if you want, but my lawyer already locked everything down airtight. You'd just be throwing away more time and money. Her lower lip trembled. Daniel, please. I tilted my head, taking in her pathetic attempt at pleading. Please what, Olivia? I asked. Please give you another shot? Let you have it both ways, or are you just begging me not to leave you broke? Tears spilled down her face. I don't have anywhere to go, she whispered. Not my problem. I grabbed my keys and stood. Good thing you have Brandon, isn't it? I turned toward the door, but before I reached it, her voice cracked with desperation. Wait, she choked out. I stopped, not out of sympathy, just to see her beg. She was sobbing now, clutching the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I'll cut him off. I'll do whatever you want. Daniel, just don't. I let out a slow breath, then turned to face her. Don't what, Olivia? I asked, my voice steady. Don't make you suffer the way you made me suffer. Her mouth opened, but I held up a hand. Save it, I said coldly. We're done. Thursday, sign the divorce papers, or I'll make sure you walk away with even less than nothing. Her knees buckled, and she crumpled to the floor, a sobbing wreck. I didn't spare her another glance as I walked out. Let her drown in the mess she made. Because for the first time in months, I felt free. Even as I stepped outside, her cries still echoed behind me. But I didn't care. Not anymore. I drove away, not because I needed to, but because I wanted her to sit in the wreckage of her own choices. I knew Olivia. I knew how her mind worked. She wasn't the type to accept defeat. Women like her never did. They schemed, calculated, always looking for an escape route. I was just waiting to see what her next move would be. When I got home that evening, I expected silence. Instead, I walked straight into something out of a bad soap opera. Olivia sat on the couch, eyes red and swollen, clutching a glass of wine like it was the only thing keeping her together. And right beside her, lounging like he belonged there, was Brandon. His arm draped over the back of the couch, casual, cocky. The sheer audacity almost made me laugh. Well, I said, shutting the door behind me, this is an interesting turn of events. Olivia sniffled, playing up the dramatics. Daniel, please, can we just talk? Brandon smirked, that smug, self-satisfied expression of a man who thought he'd already won. Yeah, Daniel, he said, voice dripping with fake concern. I think we should all sit down and be adults about this. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from grinning. They actually thought this would work. Let me guess. I said, tossing my keys onto the counter. Olivia called you in for backup? Figured I'd be more cooperative if you showed up? Brandon chuckled, shaking his head. No, man, nothing like that. Right. You just thought we could all come to some kind of understanding. So that was their angle. Manipulation, dressed up with a friendly smile. Olivia leaned forward, setting her glass down carefully. Daniel, I know this whole situation is a mess, but it doesn't have to be like this. I don't want things to get ugly. I raised an eyebrow. Ugly? You've been screwing this guy for months behind my back, and now you want to keep things civil? She winced. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I don't want it to end like this. We were together for years, Daniel. She hesitated, forcing a shaky smile. I still care about you. Brandon nodded, ever the supportive side piece. We both do. We just want to make sure everyone walks away with what they deserve. And there it was. They weren't here for reconciliation. This was about negotiation. Brandon had money, not as much as I did, but enough for Olivia to think she could work out some kind of deal. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. Scared of walking away with nothing. I sat down across from them, letting the silence stretch. Olivia fidgeted, stealing glances at Brandon for reassurance. I could see the anxiety creeping in. Finally, I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. So what's your grand proposal? I asked, pretending to be intrigued. Olivia straightened a little, exchanging a quick glance with Brandon. Well, she started, treading carefully, we were thinking maybe instead of rushing the divorce, we could come to a fair settlement for both of us. Brandon nodded, playing along. Yeah, Daniel, there's no need to let lawyers drag this out. We can handle this like adults, avoid all the unnecessary legal fees. I exhaled slowly, as if I were actually mulling it over. Olivia licked her lips, nervous. I mean, I've put years into this marriage, she continued, her voice softening. It wouldn't be fair for me to just walk away with nothing. And there it was. A slow smirk crept onto my face. So let me get this straight. You cheated on me, you lied to me, and now you think I should compensate you for it? Olivia stiffened. That's not what I meant, she said quickly. Brandon lifted a hand, cutting her off. Look, man, let's be reasonable here. Olivia didn't plan for any of this to happen. Feelings got involved. Sometimes things just fall apart. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, you mean sometimes married women decide to spread their legs for men who aren't their husbands? Olivia gasped. Daniel. Brandon's expression darkened. You don't have to be an ass about it. I chuckled, shaking my head. Oh, Brandon, you actually think you're in control here, don't you? That wiped the smugness right off his face. His brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned back against the couch, stretching my arms lazily. It means you should have done your homework before walking into my house like some kind of power player. Brandon narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, tapped a few buttons, and tossed it onto the coffee table. The screen lit up, playing a recorded phone call. Olivia's voice rang out, crystal clear. Brandon, baby, I swear I just need to get through this divorce, and I'll be all yours. But Daniel is being difficult. He doesn't know about us officially yet, so let me work him a little first, okay? Brandon went pale. Olivia turned to stone, her mouth hanging open. I tilted my head. That was 2 weeks ago. So let me guess, you thought you could drain me dry and then ride off into the sunset with Loverboy here? Olivia snapped back to life. Daniel, that's not what I meant. You're twisting my words. But Brandon wasn't saying anything. I could see the gears turning in his head, the slow realization that Olivia wasn't just playing me, she'd been playing him too. And I wasn't finished. I swiped again, this time opening a string of messages Olivia had sent to one of her friends. Without a word, I tossed the phone onto Brandon's lap. He hesitated before looking at the screen, but the second he did, I saw it. The precise moment he realized just how much of a fool he had been. Brandon thinks we're meant to be. Oh, he's fun, sure, but let's be honest. He's just a rebound. If I play this right, I'll get a settlement from Daniel and a fresh start with Brandon. Win-win, right? The color drained from Brandon's face. His jaw clenched as he lifted his eyes to Olivia. What the hell is this? His voice was tight, controlled, but barely. Olivia's face fell apart. Brandon, baby, that's old. I didn't mean... Brandon shot up so fast the couch shifted beneath him. His entire energy changed in an instant. Cold. Lethal. You used me. His voice was quiet, but there was no mistaking the anger in it. Olivia lunged toward him, desperate. No, I love you. Save it. He jerked away from her touch like it burned. You're a leeing snake. For a brief second, her eyes darted to me, silently begging for help, as if I'd step in, as if I gave a damn. Instead, I just picked up my phone, smirking. You two have fun sorting this out. I'll have the divorce papers ready by Thursday. And with that, I walked upstairs, leaving them to tear each other apart. The next morning, silence greeted me. No Olivia, no Brandon, no more lies. By the time I made my way downstairs, the remnants of their pathetic drama were still there. The wine glass Olivia had been holding lay shattered on the floor, red stains dotting the carpet like evidence of the night's disaster. A chair was overturned, the air still thick with the mess they'd made. I let out a quiet laugh. She had run out of options. Or so I thought. I took a slow sip of my tea, letting the warmth settle in my chest, when my phone buzzed. Olivia. I ignored it. A second later, another message. Daniel, please, just talk to me. Then another. I made a huge mistake. I don't want to lose you. And finally, the one that made me laugh out loud. Can we just go back to how things were? The irony was almost too much. She had spent months lying, scheming, betraying, and now she wanted to hit some kind of reset button? Did she honestly think that if she cried enough, I'd magically forget everything? She wasn't reaching out because she loved me. She wasn't even sorry. She was only reaching out because she regretted getting caught. I didn't bother replying. Instead, I focused on my coffee, letting each sip ground me in the reality I had already accepted. My day was planned, and nothing she said would change that. The final papers. That afternoon, I met with my lawyer, Eric, to put the last signature on our divorce documents. Everything had been carefully arranged, ensuring that Olivia would leave with exactly what she deserved. Nothing. I signed my name without hesitation, the motion smooth, decisive. Eric skimmed through the paperwork, then glanced up. She's not going to take this well, he re-Danieled. You're leaving her with nothing but the consequences of her own choices. Good, Rod, I replied, leaning back in my chair. That's exactly what she earned. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a complete erasure of her from my life. Olivia's breakdown. Later that evening, I called Olivia. She picked up so quickly that the ring barely had time to sound. Daniel? Her voice was breathless, laced with hope. I didn't waste time. I just sent you the finalized divorce papers. You need to sign them by Thursday. Silence stretched between us before she finally spoke. You're really going through with this? I let out a slow breath. Olivia, you spent months cheating on me. You tried to manipulate me for money. You were planning to leave with Brandon. What reason would I have to stay? Her breath hitched, her voice dropping to a whisper. I got caught up in something stupid. But, Daniel, I still love you. A dark chuckle escaped me. No, Olivia, you don't love me. You love what I gave you. She sniffled, probably trying to sound fragile, pitiful. We don't have to rush this. Can we talk? Just one last time, in person. I shook my head. No, Olivia, this is done. Sign the papers and move on. Her tone shifted, laced with panic. I have nowhere to go. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you slept with Brandon. A guttural sob tore from her. I made a mistake. I don't even want to be with Brandon. I just want my life back. I sighed. You made your choice. Now live with it. She choked on another cry, and for the first time I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just relief as I ended the call. The aftermath. By the time Thursday rolled around, the papers were signed. A few weeks later, Olivia was out of my house for good. And Brandon? The moment he realized she had been stringing us both along, he washed his hands of her. She ended up in a cramped, rundown apartment, a far cry from the comfortable life she had with me. A mutual friend later mentioned that things weren't going well for her. Really not well. She had burned every bridge, pushed away everyone who ever cared. Now she had no one. I had won. But more than that, I was finally free. I've picked up 2 more videos that I think you'll enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Thank you.